Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z, and tonight we are talking about favorite story arcs. Over the course of 15 years, Supernatural had a number of story arcs that ran for sometimes several seasons, sometimes a whole season, sometimes a part of a season. And we're going to talk about the ones we liked, and maybe we'll even talk a little bit about the ones that we weren't so keen on. But before we get started, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Elektra.
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor, and you can find my published short stories hither, thither, and yon. Just look me up on Amazon.
Okay, Carole.
I'm Carole Stokes. I've been a fan of Supernatural since season 3. Started writing fanfic under Fire Sign 10 in season 12. And I'm now a MM romance author under the name Ellis Colton. And you can also find me on Amazon as well.
And I'm pretty easy to find online at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. I write epic and urban fantasy as Gail and urban fantasy, male paranormal romance as Morgan. But Sam and Dean would find themselves very comfortable in all of my paranormal worlds. They could walk right in and feel right at home. So lots to choose from here with 15 seasons and plenty of arcs. Elektra, start us off. Either, a favorite or maybe a not so favorite.
Well, I'm going to start with one of the big ones that really holds everything together, and that's Found Family. There were the boys who were real family, and then there were all the other people they gathered in and held close, like Castiel, like Jack. And family is who you choose to call your family. And that's near and dear to my heart, because as we record this, it's the week after Friendsgiving, where we gathered family and friends together. And that is a theme throughout the entire series, that it's who you choose to be with, to stay with, and to care for. And it's a strong theme through the entire Hunter, whatever they call themselves, the Hunter sphere, that they care for other people.
Well, family don't end with blood. That gets repeated throughout the series. Yeah, very much. Carole?
So going with the whole larger theme idea, brotherly love. Sam will die for Dean. Dean will die for Sam. They will sacrifice each other for each other, or well, they won't sacrifice each other, but they'll sacrifice themselves for each other. And we see that happen again and again. And it's certainly, we certainly see that summed up in the real Ghostbusters, when the brothers, the two men who are cosplaying as Sam and Dean, say, who you have a brother that would die for each other, and who wouldn't want that, And so that's, as far as an overriding theme, I think that's certainly right up there, and it's one of the ones that always captures my heart.
Well, you see that so early on when Dean trades, I'll take one more year in a demon deal in order to bring back Sam, and Sam goes to hell to save Dean. It's just one after another. They keep doing it.
Exactly.
It's relentless almost how many times they die for each other.
And I think for me, one of the bigger arcs is it's not what you are, it's what you choose to make of it. And we run into that very early on, because John's dying words to Dean are, if you can't save Sam, you might have to kill him. And they have that very fraught discussion at the fence. and Sam is necessarily, you know, not super cool with this, but the idea that, you know, he's been getting these psychic visions. Up till now, Dean has been trained that anything supernatural is bad, but it's Sammy. And so as they meet vampires that choose not to prey on people, as they find other supernatural creatures or people with abilities who are trying to use them for good, Dean is really struggling to rethink what had been one of the principal things in his upbringing. And we especially get that in Sacrifice, when he talks Sam out of finishing the third trial, and he says, I'm willing to let every demon and all those sons of bitches that killed mom walk, you know, don't do this. And, you know, Sam is convinced that because of his visions, because of the mistakes he's made, that he is irredeemable, and Dean argues him out of it. And that's a huge growth for Dean. And it's hard for Sam, I think, to reconcile with that. He struggles with it because he knows he's not completely human in having supernatural abilities. And so reconciling what he was raised to believe with who he is, and can he live up to that? And we see that play out time and time again, that it's the choices you make, not what you start with. And that's a pretty deep thread throughout the series, and requires a lot of difficult personal growth.
When you get towards the end there's a shapeshifter who's also working as a therapist to help people. And they have a real, she's not doing anything bad moment. Like, she's a monster, but
Yeah,
Oh, I
she's
think-
actually helping people.
I
yeah,
think anybody who's ever been to therapy watched that episode and went, oh, that would have been interesting.
Yeah.
but nobody said they should kill her,
Right.
which made it a real, it went from monsters are always bad all the way to, yeah, maybe monsters don't have to be bad.
Well, look at Jack. I mean, he's a Nephilim. His father is Lucifer. And you know, he's living there in the bunker with them. And that took Dean a while to come to terms with, but you know, it worked out.
Well,
So,
he's part of the family.
So back to you, Elektra. Big arc or little arc? Pick one.
Okay, I'm gonna go with another big one, but one I didn't like so much. And
Okay.
that's the idea that they hit on time and time again, that Sam and Dean were destined to be Cain and Abel and fight brother versus brother for the amusement of Chuck, and that they had to do this, otherwise, you know, he was going to destroy the world. I mean, this was it. They had to do it, and every time they refused, the stakes got higher. And, you know, after the first time when we discovered they were the vessels and all of that, it was just, oh, just chuck it. You know, it the first time, okay, but after that, can we just let this go? Not my favorite.
Yeah. And you've got the refusal to be predestined, which is kind of a big, wasn't Dean's comment, screw destiny right in the face? Which is a hugely emancipating thing to say, you can talk destiny all you want, but I'm not doing it. But I agree. We ran into that over and over again. It's like, you deaf? How many times I got to tell you this? Carole?
I really enjoyed Sam having powers and the whole exploration. They didn't know why and where, and then you know, they kind of grew for a while and stuff. And I really kind of liked that. You know, the whole foreshadowing of the Boy King, which then in fanfic got tons of exploration. So I definitely enjoyed that. Side note, I did not enjoy the whole addicted to demon blood Ruby manipulating him part. That was less enjoyable for me. But the fact that, you know, out of the blue, he was having visions, and, you know, we had the one great moment where he had, you know, telekinesis. Could they have explored that more? I think that could have been very interesting. But even what we got, I really enjoyed. And maybe kind of tying into that, I really enjoyed Soulless Sam. I thought it was really an interesting portrayal. I thought Jared did a really interesting job with that character. I liked the whole, you know, how it kind of turned the regular brother dynamic on its ear. And Jensen's even commented, as far as an actor, it really threw him because Jared wasn't responding as Sam in the ways that Jensen was used to, and that was difficult for him. But I liked kind of seeing this. Sam was always very compassionate, very had a lot of empathy, and that kind of thing. And to see him as this kind of ruthless, you know, I don't give a crap hunter. And he was an excellent hunter because he no longer gave a crap. So it was all just about the mechanics of the hunt for him. And so I found that very interesting as well. I was glad when it was over because I liked having our Sam back. But I found both of those to be interesting to watch.
And not to mention those season 6 sideburns. Yeah, and I was going to say Soulless Sam for the same reason. Was Jared portrayed him so well, and it was such a difference from the Sam that we normally saw. And we had seen from the outside other hunters who were ruthless, like Gordon. And they were the bad guys. And so to see Sam become ruthless, just like we saw with Demon Dean, it was a very different side of the characters that no longer was tempered by all the good things that usually kept that ruthlessness in check. They always had it in them to be like Soulless Sam or Demon Dean. And we know, especially from fan fiction, that without the other one, that's pretty much, if they don't self-destruct, that's where they go. So I think the bigger lesson with both Soulless Sam and Demon Dean was how much they needed each other to stay human doing what they did, with the cautionary tale of the other hunters who didn't have a person like that in their lives to anchor them. So I thought, you know, and both of them saw benefits to being ruthless. You know, Soulless Sam talked about, I'm a better hunter than you, Dean. Because nothing stops me, and I don't have that second of hesitation before I pull the trigger. And Demon Dean was a demon, and especially with the Mark of Cain, he was pretty much unstoppable in most normal cases. But there was more value to being human and not invincible than having that invincibility at the cost of their humanity. And I thought that was two very interesting parallel arcs, because Supernatural loves its mirror images.
I will say I wish they had expanded more on the Demon Dean. It was so interesting. And Jensen gave such a great portrayal. I mean, oh my God, he was amazing. And it was over so soon. It was like, we barely got to like kind of get going, and then he was back to normal. So I wish we had a few more episodes exploring that, but you know, what we got at least was really, really good.
Oh, come on. Don't you remember what it was like when the episodes were a week apart? It was a really long time that he was a demon.
Well, Elektra, back to you.
All right. One I really did like was the Four Horsemen, and in particular, Death, because Death was awesome. And then, as a side note, how they handled, well, they killed Death, and how you get a new Death, and the the couple of deaths they had, and Death's library, and all of that cool stuff that they expanded after they did the Rings of the Four Horsemen. I loved the Four Horsemen um story arc with the four different horsemen. I loved the actors they got to play them. I thought they were each in their own way great. I mean, even though, God, Pestilence was unbelievably disgusting, it was just so well done. War was fantastic. I love that actor. It's the guy that plays Harry Bosch. But Death, I mean, he is so good. And you know, and I even got really fond of Billy.
Mhm.
She became Death. I wasn't really happy with all of her plans, but I liked the way she interacted with the boys.
Mhm.
I totally concur on the Four Horsemen. I thought those particular episodes were so meaty, and like you said, the guest actors they got were so good. Love Matt Frewer, love Titus Welliver, and I can't love Julian, of course, as Death. He just made that so his own from that incredible moment where we meet him on. And then the actor who played Pestilence, who I believe was a well-known character actor, and I'm sorry, I don't recall his name right now.
Wasn't
He
that
was
Matt Frewer?
terrific. He was just so creepy.
No, wasn't Pestilence Matt Frewer?
I'm sorry, Matt Frewer was Pestilence.
Yeah, he was Pestilence.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean the gluttony guy, the
Huh.
one who sucked in all the souls.
Oh,
What was he?
Famine.
Famine. Famine. Thank you. Yeah, it was Famine, not Pestilence. He was just so creepy, and when he's sucking in all the souls, and then the way Sam turns it around, and destroys. That episode was just really remarkable.
They did good work there.
Yeah.
Mhm. I'm gonna go for the Men of Letters. The bunker gave them a new home and an anchor so that much as all those crummy motels were part of the vibe of the early seasons, it gave the boys a home. It gave them a library and a shooting range and a garage, all kinds of places. Um, and the mythos of the Men of Letters was, I think, handled very well, because at first we think, hey, these are the good guys. And they were going, well, maybe only some of the time. And oh, well, maybe less of the time than we thought. And it gave the series a sense of history and depth. And then, we find out that Henry had been part of that. And so now it's like, well, Henry was doing this, but didn't tell John or his mother. So, and then there was the tension between the Men of Letters, who thought they were better than the Hunters, but the Hunters who went out and got their hands dirty. And I thought that it added so much depth and history to the series that took it even beyond, the legend of the Winchester brothers, to being part of this larger world where all these pieces fit together, and regular people are completely clueless about the existence of any of it. So I thought that was a very interesting addition that gave them so many other story opportunities, like Mrs. Butters, and like going into Oz, and time traveling, and access to their own arcane library and objects like the Pearl, which we now know had a blooper reel. And so I think the series would have lost something important without the Men of Letters arc and what it brought. Back to you, Elektra.
I just want to add to the Men of Letters the fact that they put the bunker in Lebanon, Kansas, in the center of the country, completely. Just, I always thought that was such a cool little thing they did. There were so many cool little things they did to add to the lore, and that always fascinated me. Okay, angels. When they added angels to our world, and season four, Dean is raised up from perdition by Castiel, and we discover that not only are there demons, but there are angels, and they're dicks. And we slowly meet angels. You know, we become more familiar with some of them less familiar. But we discover that whole world. And then while things are happening here on Earth, heaven is doing their own thing. And they're sometimes getting busy, and there are factions fighting up in heaven and the fall. But there's that whole other storyline going on, of which we hear bits and pieces. That there's a war going on, and then there aren't a lot of angels left, and they're having problems. And it's a whole thing. And sometimes it was great, sometimes less so. I mean, we got Castiel out of it, and that made it great. And, you know, there were so few angels in heaven that they brought Lucifer up and tried to put him in charge. That was not so great for me.
Kara?
It ran hot and cold.
Yeah.
Carole M.
I also really enjoyed the bunker, and the widening of the sandbox and the deepening of their resources was really great. Kind of tied partly in with that was the British Men of Letters, which I know were not overly popular, but I enjoyed the British Men of Letters. I liked the fact that again, there was another widening of the sandbox, that, hey, you know, hunters exist in other countries, which is something we hadn't even considered. Now, did I like Tony Bevel? Of course not. But what I liked was I liked the introduction of some morally gray characters. I mean, we had Ketch, who starts off, you know, pretty dark, but along the way, you know, becomes a reluctant ally, and really, even at the end, not even that reluctant. He's seen enough that he wants to be on the side of the good. And Mick, you know, I found both of them to be interesting characters, and I thought they really kind of livened things up a little bit. There were some plot holes in there, don't get me wrong. I totally admit that. Had it stuck around more, maybe they could have addressed some of those. But for while they were there, I thought they were interesting. And I certainly loved the end of that arc, where, first of all, we have where we just have this whole confluence. There was a couple episodes that were just like really exciting. They're almost like a movie, where, you know, the vampires are attacking, and everybody's fighting, and it was just super exciting. And then at the end, the evil head of the British Men of Letter comes over, and then we're all like, oh my gosh, how's this going to go? But Mick and Sam have this great little sleight of hand moment. I just super enjoyed those episodes. So admit there's plot holes, but enjoyed the action. You know, it was kind of very actiony, and I liked that, and the verve it brought to the series.
You're muted, Gail.
Sorry, my dog, after playing with quiet toys all day and having a brand new Chewy to keep him busy while I'm on the panel, picks a squeaky toy to run back and forth with. So, you know, Elektra talked about the angels. Well, you know, we also got a close look at Hell, and we got to see Hell under Crowley's running and under Rowena's care. And we first glimpsed hell when we saw Dean after he was dragged away by the hellhounds. But then we find out that Crowley has made hell an eternity of standing in line. Which, we're recording this at the holiday season. We've all kind of glimpsed that. There's some truth to that. The more mundane things, he basically made hell more of a corporation, and there's a real insight there, where it didn't have to be quite so medieval with all the torture, although he liked torturing people more than anybody in the history of torture had ever been tortured. But he looked for the corporate ways to screw people over, and I thought that was a nice twist. And then
He
we
was a contract guy. What else would he
Yeah.
do? He was a professional.
got to see Rowena, become queen of hell, and as she said, she had to fight for it. But she really got her redemption arc, so to speak, and that she ended up queen of hell. But that was exactly where she wanted to be. So maybe it was a good
We
thing.
have receptions for the new arrivals now.
So I thought that they took a very clever and original take on hell. And with the characters of Crowley and Rowena, managed to make all of the hell pieces an ongoing part of the story for many, many seasons. And I thought that brought a lot to the story arc, and knowing that it wasn't what we expected. All right, back to you, Elektra.
Well, clearly we've done heaven, we've done hell. Now we need to do purgatory. And my favorite piece out of purgatory, which is Benny. The redemption, there were not that many episodes that he was in, but every appearance was an absolute gem. That we got Benny helping save Dean from purgatory, and then Dean coming back to save Benny when he needed help. And he had a buddy who was a vampire. And Dean's now gone full circle to sometimes monsters are monsters, and sometimes monsters are my buddy who needs my help. And Benny ends up working in, a diner or something with his great granddaughter, until somebody decides that he just can't let that happen. But just Benny was just so charming and so wonderful, and Dean could always count on him until he wasn't there anymore.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Carole?
I'm gonna say, well, you mentioned Rowena, and I'm just gonna say, in general, Rowena was always delightful. She came in big, she went out big, and she certainly had a great redemption arc, but she was always entertaining along the way. She was not flashy, but she was large. She was a large character, and
With her many paramours.
I'm sorry?
With her many paramours.
Her many paramours, but she, her elegant gowns. She was always in a long gown of lace, velvet, silk, whatever. Always looked fantastic. Was immensely powerful, like more powerful than we even realized at first. And the way she came is to care for the boys, of course, especially Sam. She and Sam really ended up sharing a deeper relationship and everything. And, pretty much anytime she was on, she really brightened the screen, I thought. And I was genuinely torn up when she went out. She was just really a real strong character and an asset, I thought.
And now she's married to God.
Yes.
Is she really?
Ruth and Rob. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she and Rob.
They have a little girl, and they just got married. They're so
Strangest things happen in the supernatural world.
Yeah, they are so darn cute together. But yes. So see, any kind of redemption arc. Awesome. Well, I guess somebody's got to mention Dick Roman and the Leviathans. Um,
On my list.
on a charitable note, it was unconventional. It wasn't something we necessarily had seen before. They weren't my favorite monster, um, but they served a purpose and they were different. And Dick Roman was very, very corporate. And I say that as somebody who spent decades in corporate, so it means exactly the way I'm meaning it. It's not a compliment.
They were hard to kill.
Yes. And
That
they
were, yeah.
they were scary in the sense that we hadn't seen something like this before. It wasn't a ghost or a demon or a vampire. It was like, what are these things? And then they bibbed people, and it was sort of shocking. And I think for that reason, it gets, some points for just breaking the mold and not being the same old, same old.
And we even had a little time in there where they were so on top, where we really see Sam and Dean struggling, and we're really left with like, holy cow, how are they going to get their way out of this one? Because, we had the Sam and Dean replicas, and we had the fact that, yeah, they just wouldn't go down. I mean, Edgar had, he was smashed, and yet he pulled himself together, it was really, they were tough. They were really, really tough. And I think that really, at this point, we'd already kind of had a little bit of, people dying and coming back. And so here it was like, how are we really going to beat these? We can't use holy water, and we can't burn their graves. And, what are we going to do here? So that I thought I had them on my list too, because I thought they really made an interesting enemy.
Well, there
Okay.
are so few things that are alive that you can't kill by cutting their heads off.
Mm-hmm.
And they did that, and they came back.
Yeah.
And that was just really distressing. And the boys got to the point of, they went off the grid and they were driving another car.
And not just another car, they were driving like little crappy cars.
Crappy things.
Nondescript, they were driving Honda Civics.
Yeah. Didn't they drive a Pinto at one point?
Yeah, they were driving things to being very nondescript, and it was so not them.
Mm-hmm.
But they had to go off the grid and not be findable.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Leviathans were after them. It was a really good villain.
Yeah.
And I loved Dick Roman. I mean, he was so good. He was so evil in this, but yet so perfectly turned out and groomed and smiling, his little sharky smile.
Kind
And
of like a billionaire.
yeah, he was terrific. Yeah, he was terrific. I really liked him, and I very gleefully used him in a few stories as a villain, because he was really out of the norm.
Mm-hmm. So last round, Elektra.
Last round, huh? Apocalypse World, where we got to run into some of our favorite people, except not quite.
Mm-hmm.
And some of our good friends were evil or turncoats, and some of our great friends didn't know us, like Bobby, but he was still a hunter, and he was willing to talk. It was just a totally different world. And then the great, after the back and forth and all of going through apocalypse, the revelation that the reason that it was an apocalypse world was Sam and Dean had not been born there to stop the apocalypse from happening. And the angels had come down and rained hell on that place. And it was a fairly long arc that we got where Mary and Jack were stuck there, and they had to figure out how they could open up the gateway and get in there. And it's an interesting place. And the fact that they felt, when they go there, they of course felt obliged to save as many people as they could and save people on the way. And we lost Crowley there, and we lost Gabriel there. It was a place that ate people. but it was an important place in the story as we got the season 13 or 14.
Mhm.
We're getting near the end, and it was important.
Okay, Carol?
I'm gonna actually touch on a couple of things where they weren't, I won't even say they were an arc, but there are a couple of elements that I wished had been arcs. One of them was the whole Demon Dean thing. I would have loved to see more Demon Dean. Um, I would have loved to see more Men of Letters. Like, I would have loved to see them, you know, we had that one hint where they go to Rhode Island, where they, right, Providence, and find a bunker there and find an evil that's been trapped and then it inadvertently gets out and they have to retrap it. And I would love to see more locations and other stories of the Men of Letters. I think that could have been a really interesting field, like not even all the time, but every so often. Oh, hey, we found this one here, or something crops up there. Oh, look, you know, clearly there was more than one or two in the country. And I don't think they should have been everywhere, but I can understand Providence is rich in spooky lore because, of course, we have Arkham and Cthulhu and all of that
Lovecraft
stuff is
lived
based
there.
kind of in that area. And, you know, that they could have had one in New Mexico and, you know, the chupacabra capital of the world or something. And thirdly, we had one brief glimpse of a possible Bobby Jody relationship. And I would have loved to see that explored. I think they were a great possible pair. And, you know, Jody seemed up for it, and Bobby finally let his guard down for a minute. And it was just that one brief episode. But man, I would have enjoyed seeing that partly as an older person romance, you know, that they're not all, you know, young people in their 20s and stuff. Um, I kind of felt that too with Bobby and Ellen, but I felt like there was too much water under the bridge for them. But Bobby and Jody kind of met on this more equal footing. And I think that could have been really interesting. But alas, we never got to see it.
Well, and along those lines, it could have been fun to see more of Bobby and Rufus hunting together, the grumpy old men.
Oh my God, that would have been
You
so
know,
Yeah.
even if they came in as an assist or Sam and Dean came in to lend a hand, or they both ended up fighting the same, showing up in the same town without knowing the
Have
other
that
was there.
spin-off. Can we get 10 episodes of Bobby and Rufus? And the
Yeah.
boys can come in and you know, as guest stars.
Yeah, I just think that that could have been
I
really
think we
fun.
all want that, right?
Yeah,
I think that would have been fun. Well, this wasn't perhaps a story arc, but it was a recurring element, and I think it spoke volumes from Kripke and from the show itself. And that was the insertion of kind of love letters to the fandom. So we got fan fiction, the musical, and we got the real Ghostbusters with the convention. And yes, they were joking and there was some poking fun out, but it was actually very gentle poking fun. And you know, at the end of the musical, Sam says, "You put all the sub in that text you can." And there was an acceptance, yeah, they parodied it and yeah, they poked at it, but there was still a gentleness and an acceptance. And we saw that with Becky, who, you know, starts out with, "Oh, you're so firm." And she's such a fangirl and she writes fan fiction. And they end up having to come to her at one point to find out something that's in a fan fiction because it turns out to be real and important. And then she stands up to Chuck by the time even she knows he's God. And she tells him what for. So she gets a redemption arc from not being, oh, the look at those silly fans again. They dress up like us and they write stories about us and aren't they silly? And
But she
and
had a whole side business going, making little figurines.
I loved
yeah,
that. I just thought that was so cute that she had this
I
little
mean, she was
figurine business.
married and she had kids, but you know, she had a little side business going to make money. It was great. How
and
many people actually do that and sell little necklaces and charms and stuff to the rest of the fans?
it's half of what's on Etsy. But I thought that
It's all
that
over
was,
the place.
yeah, but I thought that including that in the way they did it was such a love letter to the fans and acknowledging, we know you're there. We know you do this stuff. And, we're mostly okay with it because they understood that it was us loving them. And I think that we see that in real life at the conventions with how much love is reciprocated to the fans from the actors and how much they genuinely, they're not just there clocking their time. They're interacting as much as you can in that kind of setting. And so, yes, it's a parasocial relationship, but there's much more depth to it than the usual person who walks on a stage, does their thing and walks off and gets their check. And I think that is one of the very special things about Supernatural and its fandom and its actors. And I love that it got reflected in the canon of the show itself. Well, folks, that's the note to close us up on because we are now out of time. So before we go, please tell us again where we can find you online. Elektra?
Elektra Hammond, you can find me at untilmidnight.com. And I do most of my social media on Mastodon, where I'm Elektra at wandering.shop.
Okay, Carole?
You can find me on many, many, many continual panels and on Facebook in the continual Facebook group as Ellis Colton. All of my socials and my newsletter sign up are at elliscolton.card.co. So that's elliscolton.carrd.co. And my newest book, The Case of Thistledown House, is now available on Amazon and Smashwords.
Awesome.
Have that.
Well, I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. All of my social medias, and I'm on most of them, including Blue Sky now, are one or both of those names. So if you spell it right, you'll find me. I do run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook, and of course, Continual. So thank you guys so much for being here. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon. So we'll see you online.